In Spanish, they say el jefe. In Italian, they say il capo. In isiZulu, we say uboza. We have the major privilege of being joined by the chairman, Mr. Paolo Cavalieri. Paolo, how are you?
The privilege is mine. Thank you. I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you. So you are at the very top of the story that is iTOO Special Risks, and you've had a storied journey within insurance. It's actually something that your family has been involved in as well. About 40 years in the insurance industry?
It's a team that's at the top, and it's 1985, so we're 1 year away from 40 years.
We'll make sure to have a big bash next year for that anniversary.
We should do, yeah. That's a good idea.
And it started in Europe.
Luckily for me, it started in Europe. My dad was country manager for a Italian insurance group called Generali, multinational. They call Generali the old lady in Italy because it's the oldest share on the Italian stock exchange and one of the biggest capitalizations on the stock exchange. Multinational, 175 plus years old today. They had an office in South Africa, and my dad was transferred here in 1958. I was born a few months after my parents arrived here. My parents and my brother arrived here.
So you were born in South Africa?
So I was born in Johannesburg at the Marymount, just up the road on the hill. And it was through my dad that I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to start in insurance. I didn't know what it was about. I heard a lot of insurance speak across the table, of course, at meals and what have you. And I was very lucky. I didn't realize it at the time, but I can say that today.
So I would say it's definitely in your blood.
Yeah.
But that's made up of a few different things for you. When we think of Paolo, we think of family, we think of football, and we think of Formula One.
Okay, that's not a bad list. Thank you. I'd probably add rowing to that. I've been a rower and a sculler. That's a rower in one rower in one boat since I was about 6 years old. Something else that my dad gave me, and that's always been a passion as well.
You have these passions that, Paolo, one might think that you are a competitive person. I don't know how you generalize yourself, but it feels as if, there's always something that you'd like to accomplish. You've got a drive behind you, no pun intended, in terms of the Formula One. Is there a link somewhere for that? Have you always felt that you wanted to achieve, that you wanted to get to the next level? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think that has been the drive to do my best and succeed, and probably more on my own than anything else. Not independently, but on my own. When I was at school, at high school, I was a scholar. That was a little bit unusual. And every Saturday was a race. So I think that probably contributed a lot to the competitive spirit that still exists today, and long may that last. You mentioned interests. I think I'm really lucky to have a diversity of interests. So as long as I'm no longer behaving, or as long as I'm not behaving like Joe Biden, hopefully I'll have a role to play in this business.
What is that? Tapping out early?
Definitely not tapping out early. The entire opposite. As long as I'm able to add value and the team believes that that's the case, it'll be a great privilege to continue to be a part of this.
But within everything that you're saying, I think sculling is maybe a specific example there. But, whether it's football or Formula One, these are all team-oriented. No one is successful without the components. So if somebody doesn't change your wheel correctly, you're not going to be as successful. Everyone plays a factor within that. And how has that been prioritized in your leadership style and what you've built thus far with any of your businesses?
So sport and business are almost one and the same. And then one can go into different sports and find similarities to insurance. I think motorsport probably comes the closest, because even though the driver is the most celebrated individual in the team, and in Formula One it's the drivers' championship that counts more than the constructors' championship, although both exist simultaneously. It's very much a team effort. And in the case of Formula One compared to insurance today, probably even more so. An enormous amount of attention to detail, an activity that involves assessing risk, understanding the consequences of risk, positive and negative, managing those. In a motor car, perhaps today we don't think it's as risky as it used to be. In the 70s and 80s in Formula One, you'd have a driver dying, maybe 1, 2 or more dying every year, and that would be considered as normal. So that's changed, but the risks are still very much there. And in motor racing, if you're not on the edge, then you're not going to be competitive. And I think in business it's the same. If we don't push the boundaries, if we don't understand risks and try and be better at what we do, then we're going to be the same as everyone else. So the similarities are attention to detail. They're also technical. There's a lot of simulation that takes place in motorsport today. We could, relate that to data analysis in our business, AI to come, and then it's teamwork. It's very much teamwork. No one wins in sport today, no matter whom it is, individual or team, without the backup of a major team behind them. Mental health, for example, performance coaching. Is pretty new in sport.
Yeah.
Not sure that it exists yet in business, but it's certainly an important aspect of the overall makeup of an athlete and the overall makeup of a business. So there's so many different components, and to win and succeed, they have to be in sync.
Mm-hmm. Every cog in the wheel.
Every cog in the wheel plays a role, absolutely. And every individual in the team, actually, in their own right, is a leader too. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we realize that enough in our type of business. It's really important.
We've been talking about motorsports, but maybe people don't know your background as to how this became such a big passion for yours. Can you...
Motorsport?
Yes,
or insurance?
Motorsport.
So motorsport became a passion through my dad. When he lived in Italy, he did a little bit of motor racing, in particular in an event called the Mille Miglia, which is very famous to this day. It's a race that runs from Brescia in northern Italy to Rome and back. In the day, it would be non-stop, with crowds lining these small roads in Italy. And today it runs more as a regularity than a race over 4 days. And so when he arrived in South Africa, he used to take my brother and I to Kyalami to watch motor racing. On Friday nights, we'd go to the south of Johannesburg to a stadium called Wembley. My mom would come along too, and just her willingness to participate and be involved was an amazing example for me, because it's not exactly the kind of place where everyone would like to go. You're in a stadium and there are these big hot rods making a lot of noise on a dusty circuit, going around in circles and crashing into each other and so on. But that was the introduction to motorsport. And they say that when motorsport's in your blood, it's an illness, in inverted commas, that you can never get rid of. And that's very true.
You got bitten by the bug, it seems.
I got bitten by the bug. So my dad would not allow my brother and I to race. So
even though he was so intricately involved in this.
Oh yes, he was allowed to do it. We weren't. Do as I say, don't do as I do, potentially. And so and my brother's 11 years older than me, and so I think being the eldest child in the family, he bore the brunt of that. And I said, well, I'm not sure I agree with that. So I started racing with a pseudonym. Eventually, my dad found out. And then from there, my brother and I went racing. And my dad would attend the race meetings and say, go slowly but win, which is a bit of a confusing message, but I think we understood.
Yeah, one would say it's the antithesis of what a race should be, but
it is. So
I think he was gently encouraging.
He was encouraging. He was always encouraging. That was a major feature of the relationship I had with him. Yeah.
That has also contributed towards, your dad was in insurance, your dad loved motorsport. So there's a lot of legacy in what you've inherited,
Sure.
His interests, his passions, and all of that.
Yeah.
That's also something that's really existing within the insurance industries, that there's a lot of families within the insurance industry who have a legacy of being part of this world. How do you feel about that, having come from an insurance family? Your children are now in the very early stages of their careers. What does legacy mean in this?
That's a difficult question. Obviously, as a parent, to see continuity is emotionally important, perhaps. My grandfather was in insurance as well. My brother was an insurance broker.
Yes.
So definitely runs in the family. And I think the benefit of that, as I said earlier on, in jest, but perhaps more seriously, is that we are in insurance from day one, directly or indirectly. My father being part of a multinational, we'd be exposed to visitors from overseas. We would go overseas on business trips for him that the family would be allowed to attend as well. So it was ingrained, probably at an early age, and that has been an advantage. But what I would say as a parent is that, yes, it's great if our children can come into the family business, and we must come back to the topic of family, because it's not just my family, it's our family.
Yes.
And that's a value that I think is really important in our business. But coming back to children, as a parent, I think the most important thing is that they do what they're passionate about. And ultimately, if your children are happy doing whatever it is that they do, that's the biggest tick that you can give to yourself as a parent.
That's success.
Now, whether that is within the same family business or not matters to a point only, quite frankly. It matters to the point that they're happy.
And we, as your extended family at iTOO, coming back to that,
yes,
because it really is a very unique, special, young business still, but it feels as if it's existed for generations and generations, just in the way that the messages come across from different iTOOers. How did this all begin for you with yourself and Rob and your partners? It's a big milestone, I feel, in your insurance journey, your life journey, you becoming Paolo. Tell us a bit about the iTOO journey.
So I'll talk about the personal journey and get to iTOO, because, the topic here, I think, is leadership as well. And I was never a prefect at school. I was never in
just to clarify.
Well done. Good on you.
I was head of house, Paolo. Let's be very specific.
On top of it, head of house as well. So you've had leadership qualities since a very young age.
I've tried.
I didn't.
Okay.
At all. And so for me, leadership is something that well, firstly, we never stop learning, and I think that's the beauty of life. And for me, it's something that I've learned over the years. So the journey started for me with my dad getting me a job at Generali in Italy. The other person that had a massive influence on my career was the head of Generali at the time, a gentleman by the name of Eugenio Coppola. And he called me into his office one day and said, do you speak French? I said, no, sir, I don't. He said, good. You're going to Paris forever. So I said, okay, well, it's got to. I maybe made a wee wee at the time, because I'd never been to Paris or France before. And what I did think to myself is, well, it's got to be warmer than where I am right now, because in Trieste at the time, which is northern Italy, just north of Venice, it was like minus 20 degrees.
Sure.
And I was convinced that wherever I was going was going to be warmer than that. But it was a massive blessing, because I arrived in a country with a culture, even though it's European, that was very different to anything I was used to. A language that is very different to English and Afrikaans, which I'd learned, and obviously I speak Italian too. And so it was a major learning curve. And in those days, France was governed by a socialist party. And so it was very progressive in its approach to local and international affairs. And it opened my eyes immensely on the place that I'd come from, and that I'd loved and love today so much, and what was good and bad of what I'd lived through. And of course, I was very lucky to have a mentor who was a failed professor, and he taught me insurance. He taught me French, and so that was a major start for me, a big privilege. And then I was given the opportunity to come back to South Africa and ultimately succeed my father. And so that's when I realized that the corporate world was not for me. But I hadn't realized that entirely at that time. So at 33, I moved on to AIG, South Africa, It was called AI South Africa at the time because AIG had decided, due to sanctions, to warehouse the AIG shareholding locally. And I joined AIG in 1993, a beautiful period in the history of our country, and as a consequence was involved with AIG's formal return into South Africa.
Wow.
I was then given the opportunity to go and start an office for AIG in India. A lot of people laughed at me at the time because, why India? Well, we know today.
Yes.
It's a major force in international business and beyond. My dad was a prisoner of war in India, so it was quite interesting for me to be going back to India in a way.
Yeah.
But anyway, we decided that we'd done our stint overseas and home is where we wanted to be. And it was at that time that I'd had a friendship with Miles Jaffert, who was the CEO of Hollard, Patrick Enthoven, who was a family friend, and the shareholder at Hollard. And so the opportunity was put to me to go and join Hollard and move more into a family business. And ultimately, for me, the goal was to be more in an entrepreneurial role. That opportunity was given to me in 2007. After some 10 years plus at Hollard and having built a really strong relationship with Rob. Rob was the CFO at Hollard at the time. I was the CEO, and we would never do anything or take any decision without working together. And so when the time came to move on from Hollard, we were given the opportunity to invest in a new insurance company that was part of a BE initiative that we had strategized at Hollard at the time. And so we took a piece of Hollard out of Hollard, placed it in a new insurance company called iTOO that occupied this building. And it was a first of a number of BE initiatives that Hollard had engaged in, and certainly for me it was a very important strategy before I was given the opportunity with Rob to invest in the business.
Right.
And so in 2007 we were part of a new semi-startup because we had a portfolio of business that was already in place, and got cracking in iTOO. And we were really lucky. The timing was good. Market conditions were very favorable. We had a lot of support from brokers and a lovely team of people. And so over a period of 5 to 7 years, the business really flourished to the point where Hollard pitched up right next door, the meeting room next door one day, and said, well, we'd like to purchase the shares in iTOO that we don't own, and we'd like to integrate iTOO back into Hollard. And that was one of the toughest decisions of my life because the decision was left to me. And I it was the death of a dream, not just for me, but a whole team. We were, I can't remember how many people, I think we were 600 people in the business at the time. And I had to take a decision which my heart was not supportive of, but where my brain said, you have no option, you've got to do this for a whole host of good reasons. And so we went ahead with that, but with an agreement between Rob and I that we'd give it one more go. And that is what iTOO is today, and that's how iTOO started. It was a second lease on life for Rob and myself, and I think it's been the best ever. So we're extremely lucky to be part of what I think is a great team in an amazing business.
Yeah, and we're blessed to come in to create some of more of that history.
We're all blessed, and I should mention the culture because that was part of your question. That was something that I learned at Hollard. It was a fun culture. It was a live hard, work hard, play hard culture, and it really worked at the time. It was a bit standout, very different to the straightforward corporates that we have in the insurance world today that are extremely successful and still continue to be. And it was just a very different way of approaching business with a family or a set of family values at the core, and still being competitive.
Yes.
I learned in France because I'd stopped rowing to take up motor racing when I was in South Africa. And so I retired from rowing, and when I arrived in France, I couldn't speak a word of French. I didn't know a single person, and I certainly didn't know insurance. But the thing that I did know was rowing. So I got a letter from the Italian Rowing Federation and went to the French Rowing Federation offices and said, this is who I am, this is my CV, I'd like to join a club. And so I started rowing again and ultimately, very competitively whilst working. And there I realized that to win a rowing race, which I was used to doing in a particular way in South Africa, could be done in a completely different way with a French culture, but still achieve the same result at the end of the day. And that's also where I learned the importance of diversity. Diversity is not a handbrake; it's a massive strength. And I think that's what we have in this country. We have gold mines, we have diamonds, we have all these lovely natural resources. But I think the strongest natural resource we have comes from the people in this country, and it's diversity, represented, and who would have said this, by the Springbok rugby team.
Well said. Yeah. Who were doing absolutely amazing things in Paris. You see how it all comes together.
It does come back to Paris, but in the 70s and 80s, the Fat Finger speech, that was the rugby community too, and how that's changed. It's amazing.
Sport really brings in so many aspects of who we are as people, how we build our society.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
And in sport, you take your losses, but there's always an opportunity to still win if your head is in the game.
Well, you're touching on an important point here, because you mentioned competitiveness earlier. I think our business is ultra competitive. And I think it's important to understand the importance of winning and the place that winning has in our lives, because you can't win all the time. And losing is part of getting to winning. And being able to learn how to lose and live with that is something that took me a long time. But it was a really, I think, important lesson for me. First of all, to understand that losing is not the end of the world, like Madiba would say in different words, and that it's not the loss that matters, but how you pick yourself up and come back. And so understanding as a business when it's important to win and making sure we win, and understanding as a business that we can't win at all, I think is really, really important for the continued success of our business. And having underpinning our culture, a culture of winning as well. Because the winning culture and winners attract winners. And so if you can get onto that wave and keep it going, I think it really puts us in a position where, from a sustainability point of view, we can continue what we've achieved thus far as a business and as a team together for a very, very long time.
What do you tap into to become resilient? Because, as you said, it's something that you had to learn to pick yourself back up. Business is a rocky road. The highs are highs and the lows can be quite low.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you build that thick skin and that ability to bounce back?
I think it's through experience. I think experience helps a lot. It's through determination. It's through being very clear on what you're trying to achieve. That's probably the most important thing. Being very clear on where we're going and then working out how we're going to get there. And sometimes part of the how we're going to get there ends up in a mistake. So making sure the mistake is not critical and being able to get up again and remembering that's the goal, and making sure that the team is bought into it, making sure that we reinforce and communicate on a very, very regular basis what it is we're trying to achieve, why it is that we exist, and why winning is important. And then, being obsessive about it in certain ways. Obsessive about it in the way that we analyze our business. Obsessive about it in the way we prepare for whatever meeting we may have or business decision we need to take. Bringing the diversity of opinions and points of views and giving the utmost importance to one letter in the alphabet, and that's letter Q. Because the letter Q stands for question. And question is by far the most powerful, or Q is by far the most powerful letter in the alphabet, because it stands for question for me. And if we question what we do and how we do it and tweak all the time, even when we fail, and learn, most of all, when we fail, and make sure those learnings, experience, help us to take the best decisions going forward that, as a package, will ensure we'll be successful.
That's been a big, something really important that I've gained from this business is the ability to have the avenue to question. Oftentimes, and I don't want to say it exists in corporate alone, it exists in many different environments. You feel people have to know where their place is and where they're able to speak. But iTOO's, because of the culture that we've built here of transparency, of skills transfer, of bringing people up, it has been quite an open environment to exercise that letter Q. How have you continue to make yourself so accessible to people with all that you have got going on? Because when you get to a certain level in corporate, people may think that you become less and less accessible and you just sort of are seen, but not really, no one can really engage with you. That's something that you've steered away from. And why was that important and how do you balance that?
So we've gone from Q and question to accessibility. I think that... on having a questioning culture, if we can just finish off with that, it's tough because questions are not always easy to put out there because you think, what's the reaction going to be?
Sure.
And they're equally not...
Who am I?
Agreed. And they're equally, if you place importance on hierarchy, I suppose, but and they're equally difficult to receive, particularly when they're challenging questions. So it's a culture we need to foster and encourage on an ongoing basis, always, with respect and with constructive intent. And sometimes we're not perfect. We might deviate from that a little bit, either in our question or in our response. But we dare not lose that. Mm-hmm. On the subject of accessibility and again, leadership, it's important to understand what the leadership role means. To me, it's a privilege and a responsibility. It's a privilege because it has such a massive impact on a lot of people. It's a responsibility because as a leader, I think the primary role is to make sure that when you move on, what you leave behind is better than what you started with at the beginning. Absolutely. And I think leadership is getting to become a leader requires a shitload of ego. And then the day you become the leader, you've got to throw that all out the window because of what I've just said. And because I think the ultimate leader is a person that understands that they can't be the best at everything. Mm-hmm. But if there's a team that's part of the leadership group that's the best at what each of those individuals do, then I think the leader's done a good job. And it's for the leader to understand that and be able to live with that and be able to support that environment where the best of breed on all the topics that we have in our business and roles and responsibilities that we have in our business can operate in the most enabling and supportive environment that we can have. So you spoke about accessibility. So it's because of the team that's in place that I'm allowed to be in a situation where I can be accessible because the team's doing the job they need to do in their leadership roles, best of breed, and it allows me to play the role that I need to play. And as a leader, I think it's really important to be accessible because through that accessibility, I can learn a lot, and most will understand how I need to play my role. Mm-hmm. The best and most important critics in our business are not the people outside. It's the people inside. There's no one better than our team to tell us what we need to fix and what we need to learn and improve on in our business. Mm-hmm. Yes, as leaders, it's important for us to be, in sync and in agreement on where we're going. That's the responsibility that leadership needs to take. But I think the accessibility assists in understanding where the business is at and what's necessary to change or modify or motivate within the business to get there.
In the journey, you've partnered with a pretty special guy. His name is Rob Hallier.
I have. My other spouse. I'm married 39 years tomorrow with my better half, Julie. And with Rob, I'm married almost 30 years to him too. So I'm a lucky boy. Very lucky boy. You've
got one on each side, but they both play a crucial role. I don't know what your relationship is like with Julie, just in terms of the yin and the yang that I see with yourself and Rob, because though we can see the differences between the two of you, there obviously is a great synergy there. What has that relationship meant to you? And, it is a push and a pull, but ultimately it's led to a lot of great success, entrepreneurial efforts.
I'm blessed,
I would agree. And we all are blessed to have the both of you to steer the ship. So, Paolo, with us younger people coming up, and I say younger because youth is a mindset. You're a very youthful guy in my in my estimation.
That's very kind.
And I feel like Steph and Christiana, your son and your daughter, definitely add towards keeping you up to date.
No doubt.
How do you see where the future of the insurance business is going, particularly with iTOO, what you've built here? It's something that used to be a little bit foreign. It just, we all make the joke that, you kind of fall into insurance and nobody had the exact intention to get there.
No one woke up and said, that's what I'm going to do.
But that's changing. I think there's a lot of people who, number one, it may be your family legacy. It may just be your proximity to insurance, whereas before it felt like something that was a bit more far away. What do you hope to see the changes and, how insurance can evolve for the next generation?
So I think the industry needs to, and has done a reasonable job in getting the message out as to, what insurance has to offer as a career. Mm-hmm. If we understand that anything we might see on the news, from the weather to the sport to the business section to current affairs, political, social, whatever, all of that has an insurance product somewhere.
Absolutely.
There's no profession in this world that I can think of that not only offers other professions a serious career, but that is touched by life, as is the case in insurance. And that's what makes it really interesting and exciting. Most of all, non-life insurance, or short-term insurance, as we'd say as South Africans.
Yeah.
And so getting that message out, and also being part of the financial services sector, which I think is bringing on skills and specialized skills today that perhaps didn't exist or didn't represent roles in insurance that exist today, I think is a great way to get that message out and to promote a career in insurance because of the diversity and the exciting environment that it is. We are involved in mergers and acquisitions. We're involved in events insurance. We're involved in kidnap and ransom. We're involved in hugging people every day, because if we don't, then we're not supporting our culture. And why would I want to work at iTOO? And it's not just the hug, but it's everything that's behind the intention with the hug. So if you're into that, it's great. If you're into sales, relationships with people, marketing, engineering, if it's renewable energy, or whatever the case may be, all of that is in insurance. And I think that it's an amazing industry and a really interesting career path for anyone that wants to get into something that's going to keep them on their toes and excited almost every day of the week.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are one of one in this market. We don't plan to play small. We want to expand. We want to grow. We want to have a reach that, there's no dream too big for us at this point. Although, we're always responsible in what we try to do and we think about it and circumspect about the journey that we're taking. But what would your message be to iTOOers?
So where to from here?
Yeah.
So, the obvious answer is the sky's the limit, firstly. The second obvious answer is it's up to us. But let's try and put something more concrete onto that. Mm-hmm. I think our goal when we started off was to become a market leader in what we do. I think that we're pretty close to that. And I think the aim there is to make sure we remain pretty close to that and never, ever allow complacency to creep in. That's the first thing. And that starts with what we started with. And let's be the best at that. Remaining the best at that is probably more difficult than getting there in the first place. I think the second thing is that we want to, in addition to being the best at what we do, we want to grow. So top line is an important factor, but I think much more important than that is the diversification of our business. Because we need to make sure that the team that's in iTOO at any moment in time sees opportunity for themselves within the business. So that growth, coming back to the point of growth, is not just top line. It's growth in knowledge, growth in the products that we are offering to the market. It's growth in the geographies where we're operating. And I think that that's really probably the best answer I can give you in terms of where to from here. It's A, up to the team, but B, I think the growth prospects are both geographical, diversification of what we do, and maintaining the fantastic base that we've built so that it allows us to have this platform on a sustainable basis to go and do bigger and better things. And that'll be to a great degree influenced by the leaders and the people on the team. But in summary, geographic growth, product diversification, but always remaining in the insurance world that we occupy. I think focus is also critically important. Size is not important. Size will come, naturally, and it should never be a goal. I think the important goal is the other aspects of growth that I've, defined. I suppose it's in the execution and it's in the understanding of, the art of the possible, because also in our business, that diversity is not just in products or distribution channels or geographic markets. That diversity is also in what we do and how we do it. If you're in IT at iTOO, it has to be a really exciting time. First of all, because we want to evolve our systems so that we can be more efficient. We want to evolve our systems so those that we do business with find it easier to do business with us. And evolve our systems too, because there are new technologies like artificial intelligence and others that are coming towards us and saying, hang on, there's a relevant role that we can play in your business. That's the excitement.
What I've learned from you also is that it's about growth over here and over here. So your growth in mindset and the growth in, as a person and how you relate to people as well. So the business can only gain from you growing as a person.
Absolutely spot on. Quite right.
And with that...
And so we need to, on an ongoing basis, foster and support and nurture the different elements of growth at a personal level, because that'll benefit the whole at the end of the day. And it's all about learning. The day you think you've learned it all, then it's time to go to heaven.
Not quite our time yet, let's hope.
Hopefully not. Definitely not. It's true.
If you had to read on paper, you can read all of the accomplishments that you have and how this has all progressed. But what would be your definition of success?
The next one.
It doesn't just end here.
Definition of success is, particularly in a leadership role, is looking around and seeing people's lives change, seeing people as individuals in our team grow and develop and succeed. That's priceless. And so for me, that's probably the most accurate answer I can give you. It's just seeing the success that each of our team members, our colleagues, our broader iTOO family are experiencing at an individual level. That's, as I say, that's priceless.
To more success.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
We appreciated having Paolo here. We want to hear more of his story in different ways. But this was a good session so you can understand the man, the myth, the mystery. Thank you so much.
Too many M's.
Thanks, Paolo.